Hi there, loves. Kristen here, and I'm the founder of Roots of Radiance Reiki. And today I'm just here to chat with you a little bit about the We Who Rest to Create retreat that launches next week. We start January 18th. And this is what I'm calling a mini retreat because we'll gather for 3 days, 2 hours a day. And this retreat really is focused on overcoming barriers to resting, overcoming barriers to giving ourselves space, and overcoming barriers to prioritize ourselves. As I said, I'm the founder of Roots of Radiance Reiki, and I really am here to help folks overcome their barriers to prioritizing themselves, overcome barriers to giving themselves what they need. I really want to help people to build their capacity to tune into their needs, the needs of their bodies, the needs of their mind, the needs of their soul, and to tune into these needs so that we can give ourselves what we need, right? And a lot of this comes down to slowing down so that we can listen to ourselves, slowing down so that we can reattune to the energy that moves in our body, slowing down so that we can feel into the sensitivities that are trying to speak to us, where our boundaries are, where our edges are, right? Those impulses that are trying to tell us what's a yes and what's a no, right? That intuition that's trying to guide us, right? That intuitive voice that lives within all of us speaks with a soft whisper, right? It's often the really loud voice of our ego, of our mind, that is heard above all the static, all the noise, all the busyness of our lives. And so it really takes slowing down, taking time to slow down, to really tune into ourselves, right? It really is about reattuning to our own energy, reattuning to our own inner world, and really reclaiming our right to rest, our right to feel leisurely, our right to feel pleasure, our ability to slow down and tune in and prioritize. And so much of this is deeply connected to our ability to create, right? Because rest is about restoration. Rest is about rebuilding. Rest is about recreating space, right? Through rest, we can access deeper parts of our creativity, deeper parts of our imagination, deeper parts of our inspiration, right? That muse can be accessed. When we rest, we can rebuild our energy so that we can come back to things re-enlivened with a new perspective, new fresh perspective. When we don't give ourselves time to rest, we function on low power mode, right? Most of us understand that if we don't charge our phone at least once a day, often multiple times a day, that we don't get to use our phone, that our phone shuts down. And yet we forget that. We forget that with ourselves. We forget that we too need to recharge. And we think that, oh, sleeping is enough, right? And honestly, like, sleeping is powerful medicine. And yet, so many of us even struggle to access sleep. I know that my past self totally struggled to access sleep. I would stay up so late avoiding sleep. And when I did sleep, I'll name, like, I slept really deep, really deep. But for some reason, right, I couldn't quiet my mind, right? I would lay down and my mind would be racing, so I couldn't sleep. I would be so active. My inner world would be so active that even when I was like, I'm going to rest, I wouldn't be resting because my energy would be so moving. And so some of this We Who Rest to Create, this reclamation of rest, is about reattuning to our energy. It's about learning to really feel in to our own energy, our own ecosystem that is our body, our own little micro universe that is our physical body. Because when we tune in to our energy, we can begin to set healthy boundaries, right? Because when we feel that we're overwhelmed, we can say, okay, wait, I need to step away for a second. Or when we're feeling too sensitive, we notice that in our bodies and we stop pushing ourselves. So again, so much of this is about coming back into relationships with ourselves, coming back into deep relationship with ourself. The thing that's so challenging about this work is that within capitalism, within colonialism, within this het patriarchy that governs our world, that dictates our world, our life, right? There is not space for rest, right? Because when we're cogs in a system, it doesn't benefit the system for us to rest, right? When we're talking about reclaiming our own power by coming back into relationship with our intuition, our inner knowing, our inner wise self, that doesn't serve the powers that be, that want to tell us what to do, right? That want us to look to external authorities, right? To look to the boss, look to the expert, look to the person who's certified. The system wants us to look to those people for answers rather than looking inside ourselves for answers. And so many of us, including myself, right, are programmed to always look outside of ourselves. I don't know what to do. I need to go seek the answer somewhere. And what I've learned and what I'm still learning, right, is that the answer is actually within me, that I actually know the way. I actually know what needs to be done. And even if I don't know, right, I have access to that knowing, but it's only accessible in stillness, in slowing down, right, in tuning in, right? And so, again, of course that's perceived as dangerous to a system that wants to dominate and control us. Of course listening to our intuition is seen as dangerous to a system that wants us to do what we're told, right? And so I want us to be really gentle with ourselves, right? Because throughout all of our upbringings, we have been taught at different occasions to mistrust our inner guidance, right? One of the biggest criticisms that I have of our current school system is the way that it teaches young people to not trust their inner impulses, right? I can't go to the bathroom when I need to. I need to wait for someone else's permission to go to the bathroom, right? I can't move in the ways that I want to when my body needs to move. I need to sit still, right? I can't verbally express myself when I feel moved to verbally express myself because I need to be quiet, or I'm going to be that person labeled as talking too much, right? Or I'm going to be the disruptor, the disruption, right? These systems train us to quiet our inner impulses, to ignore the wisdom of our bodies, right? The wisdom of moving when we need to move, of shaking when we need to shake, of speaking when we need to speak. We are taught from a very young age to quiet those impulses, to ignore those impulses. And so I want to say that, like, this is a journey of relearning how to listen to ourselves. This is a journey of peeling away the layers of mistrust that have been placed on ourselves, the mistrust for self, the mistrust for others, right? These layers of mistrust have been layered on us so that we stay separated from each other, right? Another huge tool of these systems of domination and control, right? These systems of exploitation is this divide and conquer. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book. And it's not just outside, right? Dividing us from each other. It's also dividing us from ourselves, right? Dividing us from our own inner wisdom, dividing us from our own divinity, the source energy that flows through us, that life force, vital life force energy that flows through us. We are severed from that energy by these systems. And so we are liberating ourselves when we reclaim our intuition. We are liberating ourselves when we take time to rest, when we feel joy, right? When we revel in our life, right? Revel has been a word that's been coming up a lot for me, right? To joyously celebrate, to loudly celebrate, often including dancing, often including drink. But when you look at the origins of this word, it also means to rebel, right? How poignant is that in our society, right? That to have fun loudly, to dance wildly and loudly is to rebel. And so I say this to say, taking time to rest helps us to access joy. It helps us to access our inner impulses so that when we dance, we're free, right? Instead of feeling self-conscious, right? Rest to me is, the word lifeblood is coming through. It's so integral to the natural world that it feels ludicrous that it isn't an integral part of our society. It's part of what makes this modern world, as I see it at least, unsustainable. We can't sustain if we don't rest. We can't sustain if we don't recharge and give back, right? There's a reason it's called the circle of life, right? It goes in a cycle. We're not just pushing ahead always, right? We come back to rest and then we bloom again, and then we're blooming and we're harvesting and we rest, and then we bloom again and we're growing and we harvest, right? So there's this cycle. And so now, right, it's January as I'm recording this. It's January when the We Who Rest to Create retreat is happening. And that means that in the Northern Hemisphere, at least, it's winter, right? Winter is the natural season of rest. It's the natural season of recharging. And so I find it really ironic that within at least American society, January is seen as this push month, right? Because it's the start. So there's this idea that like the starting bell goes off and then we all have to run and race. And the reason I find that so ironic is that like January to me actually feels like a pause time, right? It feels like a time to rest before we create. It feels like a time to kind of reflect, like looking back at last year, kind of like celebrating what we did, harvesting the things that we completed, and also like letting go of what we don't need to carry with us this year. There's a level of grief that might come up, right? As we are reflecting, as we're looking back. And then we can reorient, right? After we pause, we can reorient, recharge, and move forward. And so this We Who Rest to Create retreat is all about carving out time for us to rest and recharge. It's all about creating space in our bodies, in our minds, in our world, in our schedules, for us to pause, to rest, to integrate, to digest, right? There's this tendency for us to kind of like rush, like we schedule everything back to back to back to back to back. There's no integration time, there's no rest time. And to me, I think that this feeds overwhelm, right? Of course, I feel overwhelmed when I don't have time to process what just happened and then prepare for what is about to happen, right? Of course, I feel overwhelmed when I don't have time to integrate the past experience, maybe mourn, maybe celebrate, right? But I have to just run headfirst into the next thing. And so I have created this space for us to really tune in and prioritize our own care so that we can create from that nourished space, so that we can create from a place of overflow, so that we can create from a place of abundance, right? Rather than constantly working on low power mode, we're fully charged. We're ready to go, right? Yeah. So I really want to say that like slowing down and listening to ourselves is not necessarily easy, but it is necessary if we want to create a world that looks nourishing and compassionate and understanding and patient and loving and attuned, authentic, right? Being able to tune into ourselves and really know who we are, really be in relationship with ourselves helps us to be authentic. It helps us to make authentic decisions. Yeah. So if this is resonating with you, I would love to see you next week. We start January 18th. It's the 18th, 19th, and 20th. And we'll meet for 2 hours each of those days, 10:30 Central Time. That's 11:30 on the East Coast, 8:30 on the West Coast. We'll meet for 2 hours. And we'll really just move through some rest activities. We'll do some embodiment work, some movement, and we'll do some Reiki meditative journeys and experiences so that we can really allow our nervous systems to like calm, settle, unwind a little bit, and maybe make rest a little bit more accessible in the future. And we'll have time to journal and reflect and connect, because the other piece of rest is a lot of this is mindset, right? A lot of it is, what are our preconceived kind of notions about rest? What are the stories that we are told about rest? What are the beliefs that we have about rest? Because if we believe that people who rest are weak, then we probably won't be wanting to rest, because we don't necessarily want to see ourselves as weak. If we see like people who rest are lazy and we see lazy people as bad, then we don't want to be a part of that category. And so we'll prevent ourselves from accessing it, right? And so there's a lot of mindset stuff as well as energetic embodiment stuff that come in to rest. So yeah, if you're wanting rest, if you're craving rest, I really encourage you to join me. Join me for the We Who Rest to Create retreat. So let's take a couple breaths. I've just said a lot of words. I can feel my energy's kind of hyped because I'm kind of excited. So let's take a couple breaths. Just however feels good for you. You can breathe in through your nose or your mouth. You can breathe out through your nose or your mouth. Let's just take a couple more breaths like that. Maybe we want to sigh it out. Beautiful. Keep breathing like that if that feels good. And then I want to invite you, take your gaze away from me, take your gaze away from the screen for a second, and just anchor into the space that you are. Look around you. Notice where your physical body inhabits. Notice the space that you're in. Maybe you're looking up at the corners just to get an idea of what's holding you. Maybe you want to notice where light is entering into the room. Maybe there's art on the wall that's really pleasing. Or maybe there's a plant, friend, or crystals that you want to gaze at. Anchoring into our physical space really helps our physical body to generate feelings of safety. It can also bring our mental energy back into the here and now. So I invite you to pick one thing that feels soothing, that feels pleasurable, and just gaze at it now as I speak. Really taking it in. I'm looking at a little succulent. Here, I'll show you. Let me see. That little succulent right there. So go ahead and just gaze at this item, this being, the light, whatever it is, and just let yourself come back into embodied presence. What do I mean by that? Come back into the space that you are, right? So often we live kind of disembodied, like we're really connected to our screens, we're thinking about future things or past things, we're not present. So when we look at something, really let ourselves study it, look at it, feel it, like maybe we want to reach out and touch it, right? When we do this, it brings us back into the felt sensation of being. It brings us back into our physical space. And so you can use this practice of gazing around your space, using physical items to help you land back into this space as a tool to quiet your mind, to come back into the present moment so that you can act in alignment, act from a more intentional, embodied place. Excuse me. Okay, so just notice how that feels for you. You know, maybe it felt strange. Maybe you're in a space that doesn't have something soothing to look at. Maybe who knows what, but just notice how that felt for you. And I invite you to play with that in the future. Play with what it feels like to land in your space, right? To give your body a sense of where it exists within this universe, right? To orient yourself to this particular place where you exist. This is a powerful grounding practice that can be used anywhere, anytime. And to me, it feels like a way of resting. Why? Because it quiets my mind. When I'm gazing at the plant, wondering about it, wondering about what it's like to be that plant, right? Or wondering where it's been, getting curious about what it makes me remember, what it makes me feel. When I get in touch with myself in that way, it often brings me out of that kind of like busybody mental chatter that keeps me scattered, that keeps me pulled in many directions. And so anchoring into our physical space can be a really great way to come back into the present moment. Yeah. So now that we're in the present moment, I want to invite you into one more just kind of grounding embodiment practice, just to give you a taste of what we'll be doing during the We Who Rest to Create retreat. All right, so go ahead, wiggle your body if that feels good. Come into presence with yourself. Maybe that means taking a couple deep breaths. Maybe that means letting your eyes closed. Maybe that means placing your hands on your body. And I invite you to just notice what's holding you. Maybe it's a chair. You can lean a little bit further back into it. Maybe you're standing, so you feel the ground beneath your feet and let your weight drop down a little bit more. If you're standing, maybe you want to evenly disperse your weight around all four corners of your feet. If you're sitting, maybe you want to adjust your seat. Widen out your bum so that you're more supported. And then I want you to come in to relationship with the felt sense of the fabric that adorns you. Feel the fabric that's on your arms. The weight of the fabric on your chest. Become aware of the fabric that's on your legs. become aware of your feet and what's holding your feet right now. Stay with this sensation of the felt experience of the fabric that adorns you. Or we can start to tune into what we hear. Letting ourselves listen deeply. Maybe we hear the buzz of electronics. Maybe we hear the sound of our own breathing. Maybe it's just silence and my voice. Just really tune into what you can hear. You can stay with that sensation of hearing. Or you can begin to take some deep breaths in through your nose, seeing what you can smell. Maybe it's nothing, or maybe it's something. Just let yourself smell now. And if you wish, if you're someone who likes essential oils or different things, maybe you want to grab one of your oils and deeply smell that. Lastly, we'll tune into what we can taste. Call a little saliva into your mouth and just come into relationship with that inner world, that space which allows us to taste such glorious foods. And see if you can taste anything. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just the taste of you, and that's fine. And from this space, I invite you to tune back into whichever sensation felt the most nourishing for you. Whether that was looking around the room, whether that was feeling the sensation of our clothes, whether that was listening deeply, whether that was smelling or tasting. Just tune into that sensation here for a moment. Give yourself just a moment more of nourishment. Beautiful. And then land back in your space again by just looking around, gazing again. And notice how you feel, right? I'll say that this activity lands with me differently every time, but I'll say that after it, I almost always feel a lot more calmer. My mind feels a lot quieter. There's a lot more stillness within me. And if this felt challenging for you to access, this is okay too. These are practices, so they become easier the more that we do them. And it is a very different way to experience our world, right? To be in touch with our sensations as opposed to living from our mind. Being in relationship with our felt perception is very different than the stories that our minds weave. Yeah. Well, I hope that you found that nourishing. That's just a taste of the kind of activities that we'll be moving through during the We Who Rest to Create. That starts on January 18th, next week. I'm so excited. So if you're interested, I encourage you to reach out to me with questions or just go to my link. Go to the link that's in my bio or below and register. I'd love to have you there. I'd love for you to be a part of this space where we are really reclaiming our right to rest, and we're really reclaiming our power and our relationship with ourselves. For when we rest, we can create so much more. Again, my name is Kristen, and I help folks to overcome their barriers to prioritizing themselves and build their capacity to slow down and listen to themselves so that they can set healthy boundaries and create a life that they love. I hope that this finds you well whenever you happen to be watching it. Bye now, my loves. I love you.